We are live, so welcome back to Sun Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. We are continuing our work on labor, and we're getting an update on a report on data management. And this came out of our work in the Special Oversight Committee on Workforce Development, which you heard referred to earlier. And to present this work, which was sent to us in December, we have Sabina and Drake and Josiah. So if you take it away.
Thank you. Good morning again. For the record, I'm the Executive Director, Sabina Haskell, of the Office of Workforce Strategy and Development. As we go through testimony to go over the report, we'll each be taking a part. I'll start, and then Josiah will chip in with all of the work that's going on through the Agency of Digital Services.
Right.
And we collaborated with them on this report.
Right. And I just want to say, we talked about this yesterday. I mean, data and access to data, statewide and in and out of state, the collection, having a repository for data has been that we can all access so that we de-silo data. I think that's maybe a good way of putting it. De-silo data. Randy, you talked about this yesterday. I mean, it's an issue that's ongoing.
We talked about it earlier this morning.
So we're welcoming this report and this work, this beginning of this work, big time.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
And then I was just going to say that Drake will walk you through the considerations to starting the data trust.
Right.
For Vermont, or other opportunities in participating with multi-state collaboratives. Moving on to the next slide, you directed us to do this study, as we just mentioned, and much of this was developed and incorporates the SOCWED, Model 3, of the SOCWED report. I'll just say that, as we've said 100 times this morning already, that data plays a very key role in decision-making in every facet of our lives, both professionally and personally. We use data all the time at home when we make decisions about things. So when it comes to figuring out a workforce development for the state, a data trust could be with that decentralized repository that you just referred to, Senator. It would be secure with data-related workforce-related data and allow everybody to share and evaluate how things are progressing. It has a lot of potential to strengthen our decision-making, as you said, the accountability and looking at longer-term economic resilience, which we really obviously want to do. And I'll just put in a plug that we need more people, we need more housing, we need more businesses, and we need more opportunities for a robust future for Vermont. And we need to jump in, and we don't have time to lose. So the current situation with the workforce data, most everyone in state government, education, community organizations, municipalities, employers, they're keeping data for their specific needs and uses. But to your point, again, we don't have a standalone tool that connects it all and allows us to be able to evaluate collective impact of these efforts. I just wanted to show, I don't have my slide, I'm sorry.
I can have your papers.
Do you need mine?
No, I got it, thank you. So just briefly, here are some of the, just a few examples of the data that we're doing right now. We do all the time. At the Department of Labor, participant outcomes, the labor market information that you're aware of, registered apprenticeship data, and way more. At AOE, there's data collected on CTE, adult education and literacy outcomes. At ACCD is the Vermont Training Program. At AHS, I know there's way more than what I put here, but ICANN, healthcare, and then the Healthcare and Workforce Data Center.
Remind us what ICANN stands for.
Individual Career Advancement Network.
Thank you. Thank you. And then, of course, the Chief Performance Office puts out the annual report of metrics and data that they collect as well. We all use these assessments and what's working, what's changed, what needs to be changed, and it's done every day by the data experts within the different agencies and departments. And it's already informing how we are working to improve our services and outcomes for Vermonters. But I just briefly, the concept of a standalone data trust, as the Model 3, it's a great idea, and in a perfect world, we could just wave the magic wand and make it happen. But we all, I mean, even as the report points out, it's a huge endeavor with lots of considerations. There's substantial investment that's required, as we all know. There's going to be complex governance agreements that will be needed in terms of keeping data safe and private and all of that.
Madam Chair, or Sabina.
I'm right here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not there to.
I apologize.
Oh no, I didn't because I didn't know if you'd see it, but I would need a reminder, like who even asked for this. Frankly, I mean, like I'm all about good data, but this didn't start with talking about what federal sources we rely on and if they're still safe and stable. I agree that we're probably going to get to the point where we're talking about alternative partnerships like the Vermont Futures Project, which does a great job with data. So I'm just trying to remember, did the House ask for this study? I don't know what this is.
It's part of Act 146, which I don't remember what the Senate bill number was, but
2024.
last year.
146.
That's going on 2 years ago now.
Right. And it was growing on a model that the state oversight committee on workforce. It was the special oversight committee on workforce development. We didn't recommend a data trust as a way to go, but we wanted to explore what would be required to provide a central repository for data that would break down the silos of data protection within state government in particular, but both in and out, so we would have a place where everyone could go to get the data that was available. Because data is so essential to so much of our decision making, and we asked to explore what would be required for us to do that and to build on our data collection. We already, in Department of Labor, as you know, because we get great reports and use the data that's collected by Matt Barowitz at the Department of Labor, but there's so much more data out there that would support the measures. When we ask for measures, how are things doing, you've got to go and find that data at the Agency of Human Services. You've got to find it, I mean, all over state government. It doesn't exist in any one place. So what I believe we were looking at was a repository. And Kendall can help me if I'm mistaken on this, and I appreciate you elaborating on it, but what we were really looking at is what would it take for us to really have a more robust data center with data from all over? Can we go on?
The only thing I would add was we had so many parts and pieces to look at in that task force, but this was one that there might be something there, but we just don't have enough time as we're doing this legislative report to fully dive in. So this was meant to be kind of a follow-up of, is this a good idea or not? If it is a good idea, what would it take? What would it look like? Not necessarily a full-throated endorsement of we're absolutely going to do this, but what if we wanted to do something in this space similar to how other states have done it? Right. What would that look like for us?
And so this follow-up is, I think they're going to end up with a recommendation on how we move forward with some data collection in a free. So I'm going to leave it to you because you're going to make your recommendations.
Did I send you my talking points?
No.
Because the repository to me is the same thing as a data trust. So to your point, and that's why I've been using those words. It is a substantial investment of time and finances, lots of coordination, which we were just talking about with, in-state government, out-of-state government, employers, community organizations, etc. So at this time, it's our recommendation that we start by looking at these alternative partnerships. And Senator, you've been in the executive committee where we've talked about that, and Drake will get into more detail in a minute, with these multi-state collaboratives that are collecting lots and lots and lots of data and let you look, across state lines, how's Vermont doing, versus New Mexico kind of thing. So I'll leave it there and introduce Josiah. The agency has taken a number of proactive steps in setting up data structures in the state, and that we've outlined in the report, but he'll give you an overview again here. He's going to walk through data lakes, data warehouses, and the agency's efforts for implementing all the data sharing among your partners. And with that, I'm introducing you, the Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Director at ADS.
All right,
Right?
for the
Welcome,
record,
Josiah.
thank you. Josiah Raish, Chief Data and AI Officer of the state. So, thank you. And Senator Rock got a much deeper dive on this than I'm going to give today, and which I talked a month ago, I think we were doing that. So, do you mind if I peek at my slides so I don't have to look around?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. So, in December, I guess this was about 3 weeks ago now, we completed the foundational infrastructure for our statewide next generation data platform. So this is specifically for enabling cross-agency data collaboration much more effectively. And we call this our data lake house. And
Data lake house?
Yeah, lake
Like how we
houses are
can go there
cool.
for vacation?
That is the
And
number
learn
one question.
about data as we,
It's really fun. So the reason that we call it a lake house is it has two pieces. So there's a data lake, which allows for kind of very quick ingestion or bringing in data into it and start getting some insights out of it right away. And then there's a data warehouse that allows for more complex data integration across agencies and things like that. So we combine those two and we call it a data lake house because it has the features of both kind of smushed into one technology platform. Smushed being a technical term. So this is really like important foundational infrastructure for us. Since 3 weeks ago, we've begun bringing data from Department of Health. We're having conversations with the Agency of Education and Green Mountain Care Board, bringing data sets that they have that are high priority into the lake house and kicking off projects for that. And of course, we're also talking with So as data gets loaded in there, it really gets rid of the technical challenges, the technical hard parts of linking data together. Because data is like adjacent. It's not shared unless there's a data sharing agreement, but at least it's kind of in the same place. So it's much easier to combine to answer analytical questions or build out reporting.
so Josiah, I'm gonna ask a basic question. If data is not shared, how are we able to access it?
Yeah, so the way that we handle that is each data set is stored, it's literally called a bucket. It's kept in its own bucket, and only the people who manage that data have access to it until we put together a data sharing agreement that says Senator Brock is allowed to look at this aggregation of this data for these purposes. And then at that point, we create a view on that data that, whoever, either another agency,
For our legislative
or
council, for
legislative
example,
council.
we're like drafting bills, so we are gonna need to be able to ask people that we are working with to go and find that data. So as we know it's there, we need to be able to have it well marked and accessible.
Yes, exactly, which gets to the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
So the other big thing that we're working on is data governance. So data governance is a big nebulous, scary thing, but we're really, when we talk about it, we're trying to get at two things. One is maximizing the value of the data that we collect and steward, and then the second piece is for protecting that data's privacy and security of Vermonters and the integrity of our programs. So we're balancing those two things, maximizing value and protecting security and privacy. That's where those data sharing agreements come into play. But one of the other parts of data governance is building out what we call data catalogs. And so
Right.
that
Because
is
it's only useful if we know what's there.
exactly. And so
Right.
that's what we're starting to put together as part of each time we onboard, say, Department of Health, we're cataloging all of their data and getting a high level view of what's in there and how it can be used. Because a lot of times, and we talked about this at Chai Talk, we go into it extensively if you're interested in it, but a lot of times data is collected and it may not be suitable for the purpose we want to use it for. An example I use is like the Secretary of State, some of the data that they collect on businesses is literally, they take whatever the business has given them and they put it in a filing cabinet. Like, it's a digital filing cabinet now, but they're not doing any additional validation, any quality checks on it, unless they go into an administrative process that requires that. And so if you were to use, overall, those submissions are pretty high quality, but if you assume that everything in those is 100% accurate, because it's the Secretary of State, you're actually going to have some incorrect stuff in there just because it's collected directly from, often very small businesses, and there can be errors, and Secretary of State isn't necessarily validating all of that as a part of their process. And so we run into things like that across data sets. So one of the things that we do in the data catalog is we make sure we've kind of captured what are the things we know about that are like asterisks. If you're using this data, these are the things you should know about. This is when you should go talk to
The qualifiers.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. So those are the two big pieces of the foundational work that we've been doing, and then it's very exciting now. We're starting to put workloads together. I get very excited about this stuff. It's very nerdtastic, but
Madam Chair,
Yes, Keisha.
I didn't know if you were going to the next slide,
nope.
Okay. So,
Is your presentation for the next slide, or are you okay?
well, I didn't want to leave this slide without.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So I'm still looking at every slide thinking, okay, what problems are we trying to solve? And I think here would be a helpful place to discuss two of the problems I've seen emerge and get your thoughts. Number one, folks may remember we had a pretty public back and forth between the Joint Fiscal Office and Department of Labor a few years ago because we saw some really outsized disparities in women returning to the workforce in like a month point in time during the pandemic. What was problematic is we were told we can't extrapolate that further. We can't trust that data because some of the data was gathered in a gender specific way or with a gender related question, and some of it was not. So I'd like to make sure somewhere in this we're addressing the question, how are our crosstabs? I don't know, there's so many terms, lake shore, lake house, I don't know. Like, how are we making sure the same demographic questions underpin all of the data across these agencies? And then the second problem I think I've alluded to a little bit, and Matt Barowitz said he wanted to watch this more closely last year when this administration began in Washington. But I would say I've stopped answering certain federal questionnaires. I used to answer the CDC ones regularly. And if I, as a pretty comfortable state senator, am not finding it in my best interest to answer federal questionnaires, is ADS tracking any change in participation in the bedrock data we all rely on, which is U.S. Department of Labor statistics? So those are my two problems I hope that have been plagued me in my 14 years here, is demographic data being very consistently underpinning everything, and how we are monitoring people's response to concerns about federal data protection?
Those are both really great questions. So taking the first one about getting consistent demographic data across our programs. You're right, currently it is inconsistent. It's kind of, yeah, it really depends on the program and the vintage of the data and all that.
Yeah.
So one of the things on our work plan for this year is working with Susanna Davis and the Office of Racial Equity to develop a standard package of demographic questions that we would like to evolve our business processes toward routinely collecting. That's going to take a few years, right? We'll put out the standard probably, I don't know if we'll have it done by July, but sometime next year, sometime in 26, we'll put out a standard for it. But it'll take some time to evolve all the processes to be collecting that. But that is something we're tracking and actively working on. Any follow-ups on that? I know that's not the most satisfying answer, but.
Well, it's good that it's already on your radar and that you're working on it. That's, I think, comforting.
Yes, and my only suggestion would be to sort of add it to this presentation or future presentations, because, you know, I mean, I think that's something that has been a through line for so many sessions, is we're not able to tell where our policies are having the greatest impact geographically or demographically, without underscoring how important that
Right.
new strategy will be.
Yeah, it goes to your qualifiers earlier. I mean, until that's consistent, it's very qualified.
Yes.
And then the second question, the change in participation, how are we able to track that?
So far, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence of a general chilling effect across our programs. We don't have anything hard yet, any hard numbers, but we will go see what we can find to quantify that. But yes, anecdotally, I've heard, you know, much like what you just said, Senator.
Right.
By that, do you mean a chilling effect in terms of people being, in effect, scared away by the amount, volume, and type of data that's being collected?
Or that they
Yeah.
don't trust who's collecting it.
So this is, to some extent, the other edge of collecting demographic information is you can actually scare people from participating at all. And so we want to make sure that we have a standard way of collecting it, but that we're not forcing it in some places, but we just need to be selective about that. That's one of the, like, we can come up with demographic questions that we're going to ask very quickly, but it's really the part that we're working through is when do we require it? When do we have it be optional? How do we approach that? Which means there will always be some asterisks on the data that's collected. Sure. But as far as chilling effect, I'm thinking more about the last year when the federal government requested and required data on SNAP recipient households, and that was a complicated data request to answer, right? Trying to make sure we were balancing Vermont privacy and compliance with the law. And so, as a part of that, we got anecdotes that families who had children who would otherwise have been eligible for SNAP, but the parents were not documented, were dissuaded from applying for that program. Again, hard to quantify the number of people who don't apply for a thing, right? Like, but that's the type.
You can only compare it to who did before.
Exactly. So yeah,
Given our time, I'm going to ask us just to move along.
Thank you. So that was what I wanted to cover. I'm happy to answer more questions as we go through the rest of the presentation. Appreciate it.
And we're also, like, in the interest of time, if you'd like for us to come back, we can do that, or we just run through.
Why don't you finish? We got,
Okay.
give you the so,
Well, just in that's fine.
So in light of sort of what we've been learning from sister agencies and from the Agency of Digital Services with the work that they're doing, we have come across a couple of options that would potentially give us more information to drive policy decisions. That would be, I think, free and easy to start to build even more information, and to Senator Brock's point, start to give us access to comparable information about how other states are doing on specific issues. So we wanted to briefly talk about one multi-state data project that we've been in conversations about that's offered by the U.S. Census Bureau called the PSEO Coalition, which stands for Post-Secondary Employment Outcomes. I just put that aside so I got the acronym correct. It's a project. It started out of Texas. Some folks down there had some questions that they were wanting to answer, so then they elevated the issue to census and started this sort of coalition was born out of that effort. It's comprised of 35 states and over 1,000 higher ed institutions. And it allows states to combine their census data, wage and earnings data with data from about educational outcomes from higher education institutions. So this says it utilizes census data, so it does not require the state to do anything else that's already data that's being reported to a trusted federal partner, and it's also no cost to states. So what would need to happen for Vermont to participate is higher ed institutions would need to agree to share their data. And as Senator Robinson mentioned, this is a time where that decision about whether to share data is a little bit more fraught. So we're definitely aware of that, but this is a project that we think has some exciting potential for Vermont to participate in. And as you can see in this map, Vermont and New Hampshire are really the only states in the Northeast region that aren't participating. So it could give us access to information about folks in Maine, New York, Massachusetts, et cetera. So it gives information, and this is information that's disaggregated and would be available. I'll show you a couple of screenshots of what the dashboard looks like.
Who has made the decision to not participate in this? Is that
I don't think
Josiah?
No, I think we just haven't started yet. It's
Yeah.
really.
Okay.
Yeah.
So until we did this work, we weren't really in a position to participate. Okay.
Yeah, and we have had some conversations with some of our higher ed partners who've also expressed interest. So those conversations have been happening and will continue to happen. But yeah, I don't think it was an active choice not to participate. We just hadn't yet. Yeah. So there's a lot of information that this participation in this coalition would make available to the state, including earnings information and employment flows, they call them, within industry sector and geographic region. And then the data would be available by institution, degree level, grad cohort, field of degree. And there's a couple of different time periods where that data is tracked. And the other thing I'll say about PSEO and the conversations that we've had with them is that they're adding more data to this tool. I don't know all the time, but there is the desire to continue to add to the types of data that are available. So they're working right now on enhanced wage records, some additional demographic data, and more specific geographic information. So really briefly, I just want to show what some of this could look like, and we can share more information with you all, and you know, depending on folks' interest, continue to chat about this. But this is Maine's, a snapshot of what Maine's information looks like, and I did my best to select programs that are in line with the priority sectors that the board has identified. So you could see, you know, programs. This is an associate degree group. The programs folks graduated from, the industries where they have sought employment, and where they are geographically. So there's interesting, you know, information that can be gleaned from this. And there's also an earnings capability to this. So you can see folks, you know,
So can you distill this for us, because it's pretty small. It's pretty small. It looks like a significant percent of state in Maine, 78%.
yeah, so this,
So can you just sort of distill it in words?
I think from what I have checked this with Matt Barowitz to make sure it was accurate. But this would show that folks who graduated with an associate degree in these programs, 5 years post-graduation, 78% of them are employed in Maine, and a variety of different sectors. So based on how you pull the information, you can answer different questions, but it does, I think, give a little bit more robust of a data set. And I've heard over and over again in different capacities, you know, folks wanting to know how many people are staying here, So could be something that could add value to some of the conversations and decisions that folks are making. And there's also the second snapshot I'll show is about earnings by program, and this also has 3 lines per program at 1, 5, and 10 years post-graduation. This is again being made with an associate's degree in these programs. So we can share the link to this with you all. You can go in and work with the data, but it's something that the office is interested in. I know there's support at the Department of Labor, and we have had conversations with some external partners about it. So what our recommendation when it comes to this report is to participate in some of these multi-state collaborative projects, especially the ones that are no cost and don't require us to collect additional information. Like, let's see what we can do with information we already have for more immediate benefits with minimal / no cost. Monitor the success of those projects and the work that's underway at the Agency of Digital Services and across state government.
And support the work that's going on in ADS to compile and
create and see, how over time, how is that,
So what action is needed by us? Because it sounds like not. It sounds like we can just continue to work on this and that whatever authority you would need could be delivered by the commissioner and the department.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think this is exciting.
We need to, we'd love to stay in touch about it, and if folks have additional questions, happy to answer them.
Yeah.
We appreciate you.
And at the moment, we have a lot of data. The problem is we have to go all these different places to find it, and we don't necessarily have the authority to go and find it or access it. So what I hear you saying is that in the next year or so, we would be able to delegate our, let's say, Ledge Council to go into this trust, that certain people would have permission or agreements to be able to access this data, and that we could then get it so fairly readily.
Yeah, we need to have conversations about the timing of bringing VDOL specific data into the environment. So I'm not going to commit to like in 1 year, but yes, that's what we're working for.
Okay, great. So this is something we just need to stay on top of and follow up. And
the PSEO stuff is actually faster, and it's a publicly available dashboard. So like you can go to their website now and do what we do. And so once the launch data is in there, that will become available for you all, for Ledge Council.
But then we can also bring it into the one place we're gonna hope to drive everybody for data, at least at Vermont Dispersed.
Yeah, the internal.
Okay. To the data lake house.
Yes.
Bring your beach towel. Okay, great. Thank you. More to follow, but it sounds, it's exciting, and I think we will have many more workforce conversations because the workforce is front and center this year of education just on its own. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really grateful, and we will follow up with other questions and concerns, and anything else you think we need to follow up on also in terms of the next little bit. Let me know, but this was terrific. Thanks very much.
Good.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, and good luck on year 1.
Day 3, day 3 tomorrow, yes.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
And new leadership, exciting, I mean, all great. Terrific. Thank you very much. We're gonna switch gears because for this first week, we weren't yet fully invested in all labor on Thursday. Next Thursday will be all labor. And so we'll see you back, some of you, on, I think we're doing 173. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which would give me, want to check out it. I think you're getting invited. And so we're going to switch and take a deep breath and turn to housing, and we're going to invite our housing task force in, because it's, again, hearing about work that we asked for. Thank you, guys. This was great.
Thank you. Yeah, we're gonna.
So Kirsten, what a treat to actually be in the same room.
Yes, I know, not electronically.
I know.
Yeah.
It's great.
Hi.
Ms. Dixon. Oh, dear. Come on, thank you. You kind of to close the door on her.
Yes, the most nerve-wracking part of this for me is setting up the technology, so.
Well, we have help on the tech front.
Yes.
Hi, Russ.
Hi, I want to steal back a couple of my chairs if I can. Well, whichever one, I don't care, they're all the same.
Yikes, I thought those were our chairs.
No, you guys haven't stole
There must be something with chairs or something, because I saw
Thank you,
Agatha
Mr.
carry
Chairman.
a
them.
chair
That was Mr.
upstairs.
Chairman.
I apologize, I did not know we had stolen.
Yeah, there you go, we took this morning you did, that's okay. I'm trying to set the room back up for the education.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Excuse me, so I need to advance my slides for me.
Great, so we are now going to pivot while you do that to a report that we asked for last year in Act 69. A report that has been titled On the Road Home. And Kirsten Murphy from the Agency of Human Services spearheaded this work. There was a large, robust group of people working on this task force. And we're going to, if you need help from Kiara, just let us know.
I'm just waiting to get connected to the internet, which I thought I was already connected, but.
Sometimes switching the buildings, it. Do you have the language that you send it again?
Okay. Thank you, Susan. I'm sorry, I knew this to be the turkey at 6 connection.
And just committee mates, the road home is here. Yeah, the road home, her slideshows, I think, posted on our website for anybody who's listening and participating. So as you may or may recall, David and Randy, this is the report on housing need for our intellectually developmentally disabled community. As we look at both the numbers of Vermonters in need of that additional supported housing and the amount of the housing that's disappearing.
There, I think you might need to send me the link again.
Are no longer available to them, or their parents are aging. We have a significant population that we've identified in that county that about 600 people in need.
There it is.
Just know that I have a hard stop at the meeting.
I do too.
We all do.
Sorry, we started so late. I think we had to. That was our. But that's
My fault.
no, it wasn't anybody's fault.
No, it was all of us.
It was the chair of Elcar, but some we did on.
Trevor School.
Oh, right, squirrel. Okay.
Okay, you're joining the meeting, you're almost in. Let's just join.
We all set?
Let's just join. I think I need to be let in.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. And then you just need to share your screen and do a lot of it.
Okay.
And I just need to give you permission so we can ask for it.
Yeah, you need to turn your mute button. You need to mute yourself. Just mute her. Susan, can you mute her? Just turn her volume. Turn your volume. Turn the microphone off. Okay. Okay, we all set?
Yeah.
What I'm unclear about is, where's my slides?
Here.
I'm sorry.
The microphone is going.
And you gonna share your screen? I might have done those.
So open your slides into the next presentation and then the share screen to your slides.
It's not up there yet.
So then we're just gonna go right here. And we're gonna go to the tab you opened. Where your slides are. Here you go. And then I should give you permission to just give me 1 second.
Okay, and we just need to make it full screen.
There we go. All right.
Great.
All right, so hello, I'm Kristen Murphy. For the record, I'm Executive Director for the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council. And just for full disclosure, the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council is a federally funded, 100% federally funded public board that sits within the Agency of Human Services. And as a condition of our receiving our federal funding, I have unique permission, my colleague and I, Susan Aronoff, and I have permission to come to the legislature and testify on behalf of our council at any time without the normal types of approval. So we are speaking on behalf of our council, and specifically today, was chair of the Act 69 State Housing and Residential Services Committee, which Senator Clarkson sat on, and I also was the lead author on the report. So I'm here to tell you what the report says. It's essentially my job.
Great.
So if you go ahead and advance the slides. There we go. Okay. So first, I just want to thank the legislature for giving us an opportunity to write a plan about how we could get our residential services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Think of those as the kind of most significant, highest support need population who receive extensive Medicaid funded services. How we could get that system calibrated around the realities of housing today, as opposed to 30 years ago when we first set up our system. So if you could go back to, can you go back? Thank you. Okay, so you asked us some very specific questions when you had us write a report. How long will it take to get to 600 units? 600 is an estimate based on an evidence-based kind of algorithm that other states have used to predict if you have other housing choices, who will migrate to those other choices. What would this cost? Are there state policies that need to change? And will the plan address the full range of support needs for this group? Because it's a very diverse group of people, ranging from folks who are relatively independent to folks who really have to have 24/7 eyes on. Go ahead, Sue. This slide just lets you know who was represented on that committee, along with Senator Clarkson and Representative Donahue. What was important about what you crafted there is that you put people in a room who don't normally get to problem solve together. So we've long had a relationship and been involved with Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, but we had no housing director with us. And we had a representative from the treasurer's office, and Treasurer Pichek followed very carefully through his representative what was happening. We had folks from Alex Sparrow's office, we had somebody from Alex Sparrow's office. We had somebody from central office at AHS, we had Dale, we had somebody from the Trade Association of General Contractors, and then we had a very active parent advocate from a group of about 125 parents who've been really active in this space. We had Vermont Care Partners, a representative of the agency system, and we had the council, and we had also a self-advocate. Go ahead. So we had certain touchstones that I want to call your attention to. The first, I think, is just worth saying out loud, that every Vermonter with IBD deserves to live with dignity, safety, and self-determination in the community they call home. That seems pretty straightforward, but that is the value of our system. Second, though, is maybe less straightforward, and it was Green Mountain that brought this to the table right away. It's not about the building. You would be tempted to think it's about the building. Only this kind of apartment is only appropriate for this kind of someone with this set of support needs. That's not really the way we think about it. Any type of housing model that meets all the state rules and the federal rules, and there are many of those, can, with the appropriate support, be appropriate. It's not unusual in another state for someone with quite high support needs to live in their own apartment with a live-in care provider, for example. But that's not off the table. It depends on the support that people have. Yeah, there's some issues about having a second bedroom, and, ADA compliance and all those things, but we're not focused on pigeonholing people into certain models. So why are we talking about this? This pie graph shows you basically the distribution of residential situations for people in our system. And you'll notice that the two biggest pieces of the pie, almost 80%, are either living with family members, many of whom are aging beyond the ability to provide the level of care that they're providing, or with a shared living provider, which is essentially an adult foster care model. People don't like it when I use that term. There are many fine shared living situations, but frankly, it is set up under the IRS code where it is called adult foster care. And when we built our system, it was a mechanism to get people into regular homes in regular communities, often people coming out of Brandon who did not necessarily have family members to live with, but might have a relationship with a staff person at Brandon who was willing to share their home with them and bring them into their family. And as I say, there are many fine shared living providers, but we're kind of maxing out on that model.
I'm just gonna ask a question there, because the adult foster care was post-Brandon,
Yes.
and it was when we closed Brandon in 1993. That is where a significant percent. If Brandon was open now, would it be able to house the 600 that we?
I think we sold off those properties and things, but
I'm just saying,
I think at its height, it was 500, I want to say, more like 500 units.
No. So just to
But
remind
at
everybody.
an incredible cost, institutional care is extremely expensive, right? So that was part of why moving to the community was kind of very widely supported. And we were right out of the gate very early as a state. We didn't have a lot of other states to look at, and shared living made a lot of sense for us at that time. I would also say that Vasile kind of called my attention to the fact that VHCB was really right there as a partner. When Tom Hogan was working on closing Brandon, VHCB helped make that possible by creating about 125 units very quickly. They were somewhat more institutional or congregate than we eventually wanted. So a lot of those properties have kind of moved on to other places. But really from the get-go, VHCB has been a partner in sort of saying, what do you need for this high need population that's dependent in a lot of other ways on the state and needs housing. I will also call your attention on this slide to the fact that group living is only 5%, and that's pretty unusual. And also there is now 1% of the population that is in fact unstably housed. They are not technically homeless, but they are in temporary shelter because we have no place for them to go. That's about 27 people. But that didn't used to happen in our system. And the only reason they're not on the street is because the state would be responsible for their safety in that situation. Next slide. So here's a little bit about how the world has changed in the 30 or so years since we set up our system, right? There are fewer Vermonters who are interested in coming into the fold in the shared living provider space. If you needed to monetize a piece of your house, you would find Airbnb a lot easier. You would find, or hosting a visiting nurse or something like a traveling nurse. There are other opportunities. In addition, there are fairly newly implemented rules. They've been on the books for a while, but CMS has new rules. Medicaid has new rules about the rights that people have when they are in a provider-owned setting. And for some shared living providers, that's comfortable and fine. There are rights like access to food at any time, the right to have a visitor at any time of your choice. But some households may not be comfortable with that, or that may not be what they imagined. And so there's a little bit of a kind of shifting, like, hey, we thought we signed up for this, and now we have this other, more rights-oriented type language. You have to have tenancy rights. There's a number of things that may make home providers think twice about going into that. Not that we won't continue to use them. We also have the settings rule. These rules also create very clear expectations in group settings, small group settings. There's a big difference between 10 people sharing a space and 3, right? There are really clear rules around if Medicaid is going to pay for this, you are going to have autonomy. You are going to be able to control your schedule. You have a right to eat the food that you like. You have these are now sort of hard baked in. So things that we worried about when we were shying away from group homes, which is a term I try to avoid because it's not favored in Vermont, but
most in families have group homes.
yeah, exactly. I mean, but you know, lots of people in their 20s and 30s share living space with other people in this economy. Of course they do. And we don't call it a group home, but so Medicaid now also makes it very clear that people have a right to receive their services and have a choice about where they receive those services. So when our system is very stressed and it doesn't have enough options, a provider may be forced to say, yeah, what we have for you is shared living, even though that's not what you're interested in. And actually, we only have this one shared living provider. Go visit them and see how you feel about that. You know, agencies that don't have enough to kind of comply with this choice that's an expectation. Expectations of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities have changed. People who've come from inclusive education expect to do the same things that other people in their 20s are doing who don't happen to have disabilities, like go live with their friends. We have talked about the aging parent situation, and then of course we're impacted by the same housing crisis as everybody else in the state.
I just want to, we're so grateful for this. We have a hard stop at noon.
So
We have a bunch of meetings.
and I try to talk very fast.
And we have, no, you're doing a great job. And we apologize. We had a very late start for a variety of reasons. This is what happens in this building. And so
I completely agree.
we will also have you back. But
I can
I just wanted to
understand,
give
I
you that.
actually really front load that history because I
Yeah, no, it's
think
important.
is really important
Yeah.
because we have shifted our thinking about what's appropriate. So the Act 69 report, just to give you a very quick outline, has the core of it is a 13-point plan. That's what I'm going to review with you. 5 of those recommendations are about how to pay for the housing. 2 are about better information and data collection. 2 focus on state policies that, yes, I do believe need to change. And 4 are about coordinating this effort. It's important to understand that these recommendations work together. Not all of them are asks of the legislature, but it is important that the legislature think about monitoring this process over 5 years, maybe through a committee or something, and that has to report to you. Because we need to hold the other bodies in government, like Dale, accountable for also carrying out and carrying their piece of this puzzle that we have to fit together. Next slide. We also call some brief attention to the other big picture issues that impact on housing. We still have a workforce crisis. We still need to really attend to quality assurance issues in our system. And we need to understand that people are often dissuaded from the more independent type of housing because of ableist assumptions about what is best and appropriate for them. So what the report does not do and what we were not asked to do is to weigh in on what's an appropriate type of housing. The types and models of housing have to meet CMS settings rules, all licensure regulations, all of the state components. We assume all of that. We are not going to say an independent apartment is better than an congressional community or group setting. That was not our charge, so that's not what we did. Okay, the 13-point plan, and here is the most important part. Affordable housing needs, as I'm sure you know, 2 components. You need money to build the housing, and you need rent subsidies, right? Our people live on SSI, that's just not enough to pay anywhere close to market rate rent. So we recommend a series of things around paying for housing.
And before we do that, I think it would be helpful for all of us to ground what that means financially. On average, what would living and for an individual living on SSI?
It just bumped up a little bit. It's like about $900.
I was gonna say it's under $1,000.
It's under $1,000. So think about
A year,
what
a month?
a month. think about what rent is in whatever town you live
I was
in.
gonna say, so the next question is what percentage of average living costs is that actually provide?
Well, that is 100% of what, because you cannot use your Medicaid to pay for room and board. So you might get some Medicaid supported services and you will get your healthcare, but you must live on that $900. Now, maybe you have a little bit of wage, maybe you don't, but that has to cover room, board, and all of your personal expenses.
And right now, for the people who live with shared living providers, they're expected to give their SSI to the shared living provider.
And they can keep back a small amount of it, like, you happen to notice, I think it's like $60. It's an annually determined amount that you can have for personal spending, but you buy your room and board from the shared living provider, and they take all of your SSI as well, almost all of it.
That's, I just wanted to ground it in a real number, because
Yeah.
it's
It's
so
very
very
tight.
financial. Okay, let's keep going. Thank you.
So, the Act 69 committee is very willing to discuss numbers with flexibility around what's available for resources. But having been asked the question, what does it cost?
Yep.
We recommended investing $10 million each year for 5 years in capital. So managed by the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. That would allow you to build 50 to 60 units a year. That's ambitious, we know that, but to get to 600 in a reasonable amount of time, that seemed like putting on the table. There are special federal grants specific for very low income people with disabilities. We should be applying for that. It's not open right now. We don't know when it will be, but we have not previously applied to that program, and as a state, we need to do that.
And that's your purview, you would be applying for AHS for that?
It would be AHS job to apply, but we would do anything we could to help. But building the housing is only a piece of it. When you create that with a stack of different funding things, you also have to think about how are the tenants going to afford the rent. So often built into that is an assumption of subsidized vouchers or vouchers that subsidize the rent. So from your $900 of Social Security money, you might only be asked to pay $250 of it for your rent. And the government, right now, the federal government or HUD pays the rest of that. Without getting into too many of the weeds around vouchers, there are federally funded vouchers to Section 8. They are not coming through the pipeline right now because of the situation we have with the federal government.
Right.
But there is a really successful program on the mental health side of the house. So for people who have long-term persistent mental illness, there's about 80 state-funded vouchers that have been on the books for quite a while. They were created when we moved to a more community-based system in mental health, and those state-funded vouchers are fairly affordable. They're roughly $1,000 a month per person, so $12,000 a year with a little bit of a fee on top. They're managed collaboratively between the Agency of Human Services and the Vermont State Housing Authority. We were able to meet with the director of the Housing Authority. She said, you know, these are really successful, they're not that expensive. You need some of them for your population. And we are continuing to talk about what that could look like, but that is an ask for the legislature.
And I just want to highlight Kathleen Burke from the Housing Authority testified this morning in House General Housing. She is working on a proposal to create a statewide pool of rental vouchers for the special populations that the Agency of Human Services serves. So this is a slight variation on our recommendation, rather than have, well, there's, you know, 80 vouchers for people with psychiatric disabilities, that's great parity, and there are 80 for people with developmental disabilities. Well, then the question is, what if you have a brain injury? You know, she doesn't really like the silos, and from a policy point of view, we would agree. However, we do want to increase vouchers for people with developmental disabilities, so she's come up with this idea of having a statewide pool for special populations, because there are vouchers she administers for people through the Department of Health, and then there's housing for people coming out of corrections, and those are all populations under the Agency of Human Services, so they're currently organized. So this is being fleshed out as we speak, but
Because then the pool gets much bigger in terms of the number of people.
right.
And we're looking at roughly 600 here.
Right. And then what when
And it grows
Is
exponentially.
these vouchers, one thing I didn't say is that they be limited, so they're temporary. The state assistance would be temporary, the people would be first on the list for a federal voucher when it opens up, so they would move off of the state voucher slot.
Because that all goes through Kathleen, she's the, she is the funnel that could coordinate that.
Yes,
Right.
and there might be caps, like 20% of it needs for this pocket or whatever, so that, people feel.
So this requires legislative action.
Yes, that's clearly a legislative action.
Can I, if I could,
Yeah, David.
can I challenge one number? So in one of your earlier slides, you mentioned that roughly 40% were, of this population were taken care of by family.
Mhm.
But you're accounting for, on the left-hand side of this slide, you're accounting for 100% of the population needing units. In many cases, like my family, as my parents aged, family took care of them.
Yeah.
So I'll challenge that one number. I understand the premise, but
And
the
so,
sticker may not be this high.
well, I think that's right, and we're gonna talk about that under data collection, because we have a path forward to get a more accurate number. This is what we have to work with right now. I agree with you that we need to figure that out. We don't track, for example, the age of family caregivers. If a family caregiver is 79, that's kind of a red flag for me. But if there's 64, I'm not, that's not an immediate.
But the people that I've heard putting their hand up and that we heard in the task force are aging parents who are in their eighties.
I'm not challenging that, I'm just
Yeah,
challenging,
yeah. But we
covering
need
100% of the population, you may not, that number may be.
Yes, and the plan that we're laying out here doesn't really get you to exactly 600. I can play with the math with you in a little bit. But let's go ahead and, I do want to talk about the importance of taking advantage of existing programs. Now, yes, the Section 8 pipeline right now, our existing federal voucher system is kind of shut down. But the challenge for our population, for not really a lot of very intentional thinking, is that our folks were dissuaded from getting onto the waiting list for Section 8. Often just kind of for unreflective, ableist reasons, like, so that's not the type of housing for you. It might be something your parent told you, it might be something a worker told you, but our people generally are not signing up, and there's no cost to signing up. Like, you might say no when your name eventually comes up. But we need to do some re-education of our population and then maybe open those waiting lists, which you are allowed to do for time-limited window for special populations. And it might that, I have a very close friend, a self-advocate, who spent years bumping from different situations, home providers and independent living, but he was paying market rate and he never knew to get on the waiting list. He finally did, and it opened up this fall, and he's in a SASH supported apartment in Burlington now, and as happy as could be.
Wow, it's made all the difference.
So it makes all. So you talked a little bit about getting the better data. So one thing that we have the opportunity to do now that we didn't previously, when people were being managed by 15 different agencies across the system, so we now have just 2 case management entities. That started October 1st. We need, Dale, to make it a routine question every time you see your case manager. What are your housing needs now? What are your housing needs in 3 years? How old are your family members? How old is your shared living provider? Just start to collect that fine-grained data, so that we can eventually get to a place, Susan, where we can map. We know we need this many units in Orange County in the next 3 to 5 years. We can get that if we work with our case management entities who have to see everyone multiple times a year.
And this is the information that everyone's been asking for, Vermont Housing Conservation Board. Everyone wants to know, where do you need the units? So we're trying very hard to answer that.
And this is the number, the data that you have.
And this is the map based on 600 with the algorithm, but that is only so useful, and what we really need is the fine-grained data.
So this hasn't been sort of ground tested.
This has not been ground tested yet, and in fact, what we want is, we want a 9 to 12 month period where the case management entities collect all of that data. All right, I'm gonna try to talk pretty quickly in 2.5 minutes. There are some serious policy change issues. And I will just say, these don't necessarily fall to the legislature right now. I'm working to build a committee as fast as possible at Dale to talk about barriers in licensing. Basically, the licensing categories we have available are too narrow, they are too institutional in nature, they are not applied consistently, and they are a barrier to our designated and specialized service agencies being able and comfortable to support the types of housing that people want, or maybe three. You have to have more than two people together, you're supposed to have a license. But the licensing categories require costly nursing oversight that agencies don't necessarily want to take on, because it's not what everyone needs. So we really bring some good recommendations.
Those need some serious updating.
Yes. So the second, again, this is being studied, but there are a few residences that are operated not by agencies. These are sometimes called intentional communities. They tend to be about groups of people that want to share a certain lifestyle together. And there's 3 of them in Vermont right now. Heartbeat, River Flow.
Oh, Heartbeat. I have a friend at Heartbeat.
Yeah, and
which is a farm.
yes, and yes, and they're the oldest, and then Yellow House. These agencies these entities are not paid in the same way, and we need to use the kind of payment reform that we brought to the rest of developmental services to figure out a sustainable way to not have that option go away. In fact, we will probably have other private nonprofits. They might not be intentional communities, but they might want to offer, I don't know, imagine a home or sign language as the primary language. That people have asked for that for a long time. But agencies may not be the only entity that wants to step in and create that. We have to find a fair way to pay that based on the kind of cost-based accounting that we have now brought to generally all the rates that we are paying for developmental services. I'm going to call attention to this slide because there are a few asks here that might come across your desk. I feel it is critically important that the legislature ask if you're going to make some investment over time to tackle this problem, that you ask that there be an advisory group similar to some of the folks that we had at the table.
Oh, an oversight committee.
Yeah, and that regularly reports to you, because again, the plan works all together, and you should also be keeping an eye on is Dale doing this piece, is, Alex Farrell's office doing it, but that we need to make sure that that we're sticking to the plan and revising it as needed, and the council would be very happy to help with that. I don't know what's in the governor's budget any more than anyone else does, but there has been on the table a desire for a couple of housing positions. There are none right now in either an AHS central office or in the Department of Disability, Aging and Independent Living. If we're going to support our agencies to help stand up some housing and coordinate with the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board and the State Housing Authority, we kind of need a staff person that at the state that does housing.
So I just want to underscore the one about AHS, because Chair Wood said we have a housing position at AHS. Why are you recommending something that already exists? I tried to track that down. I've asked Brendan Atwood, who's representing AHS here. There is not currently anyone in AHS central office where housing is. There used to be.
That position was about.
He's gone. So I think that the legislature doesn't know that.
No.
Why is it? And that's just one thing, I just wanted to elevate that. Dale's had a limited service position from time to time. They don't have one at all.
Yeah, so this has to do with coordinating this effort. And there's out there floating something called the Land Access Opportunity Board. Sue represents us on that board right now. They have a project around helping create some housing navigators, and they might dedicate one, probably will dedicate one, to disability in general. So that's broader than our people, but it would include our people.
We are going to have to stop here.
Okay.
Well, we're stopping.
I have covered most of the important stuff today.
This is very helpful. We have we're going to go offline, and then I'll make my request. But we have a committee bill deadline, January 29th. So we would need